Welcome, it's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We are in the nation's capital. We are joined today by Jerry McNerney. He is a member of the United States Congress representing the state of California and the Delta region. And sir, I think of you and your constituents almost every day. And I think about what your constituents are facing and suffering under the weight of our drought, which has gone on for now 4 years. Tell me about them, what you hear, what you see, what you smell.
Well, the farmers are the ones I think the most immediately hit, because we see their water allocations being reduced. As you get away from the Delta, it becomes more severe.
Right.
And we're also worried in our urban areas, what is the effect of the drought going to be? Are we going to be seeing higher and higher prices for water? Right. Are we going to be seeing cutoffs of our water supplies?
Let's talk about the farmers first, then our urban residents. It seems to me that as we go further and deeper into this drought, there is a crop du jour that becomes the scapegoat. And it's always a product produced by California farmers. It could be the almond, the pistachio, alfalfa. And while it's easy to criticize those crops, these are lives, these are jobs. And so what can you tell me when I'm at the cocktail party and someone's bashing the almond farmer? How do I defend the almond farmer?
Well, almonds are they're a great form of food, of protein. They're very profitable for our farmers. But I think there's a trade-off that we need to consider. If you're closer to the water and have more senior water rights, then it makes more sense for you to put in crops that need water every year to survive. As you get farther away, where it's more expensive to ship water, where water has to be taken out from underground and deeper wells, then it makes less sense to put in those kind of permanent crops.
So it does beg the question then, do we need to start looking at what crops are being planted and where? And when I say we, I mean the government. You know, Governor Brown of California has said he doesn't want to become the crop police, but you know, is it time? I mean, look, California's a desert. So is it time to really look at crop preference, crop selection?
Well, I don't think that's a proper role for government.
Okay.
But managing water supplies, letting farmers know what to expect so that they can let the economics decide what would be the most appropriate crop for their regions.
As you know, Governor Brown, I know you're in the U.S. Congress, but I'm sure you follow what's going on back home.
Sure
Governor Brown has ordered mandatory restrictions as it relates to residential users, commercial users. Those restrictions are not applying to ag, and that's causing some frustration. But if you dig a little deeper, we know that ag has cut back, and they just agreed to some voluntary cutbacks in addition to what they were doing already. So
well, that's right.
Yeah.
Some of the farmers in the southern part of the state have had their water cut off completely. So farmers are taking a big hit, but I'm really proud of our farmers in the Delta area.
Right.
They have senior water rights, and they have voluntarily agreed to cut back 25%, which should be a great example for people around the state, including their ag neighbors in other parts of the state, to take voluntary steps before the government feels like it has to take mandatory steps.
I mean, I'm just reading here, these farmers in the Delta region agreed to voluntarily cut water usage by 25% or allow 25% of their fields to lay fallow through October 1st, 2015. That's a significant statement.
It is, and it's a big cut on their revenues potentially. We've got grapes that are old vine grapes, ancient vine grapes, that need to be watered every year, so some of those are going to be hurt. So this is a significant sacrifice by some of these farmers.
So let's talk about your urban constituents, your suburban constituents. They're suffering, and they're scared, and they're frustrated. You know, some of them are saying mandatory restrictions of 36%, some are saying 8%, you know, it depends. What are you hearing? What are the calls? What are the emails telling you?
Well, we're hearing that you're right, people are concerned. They don't want to see a situation where prices skyrocket, and they're willing to cut back. I see throughout our area lawns that are brown that used to be green, but there are recycling programs where folks can get as much water as they want from the recycled program and apply that to their lawns and shrubberies.
And I'm wondering if it's time for the federal government to get involved in some of these conservation programs. There are turf rebates that are being given by local water districts. As you just described, recycling programs. These are local and state programs. California's in crisis. And I know that Californians think we're the center of the universe, but we're in crisis, and it would be nice to get some help from Washington. I know you're one of 435, but be that as it may, can the federal government help?
Well, the great thing, Brad, is I'm seeing there is room for cooperation here.
Okay.
As long as we don't go into whether we need to put in these massive tunnels,
right.
There's plenty of room for cooperation. I'm going to be proposing legislation to give incentives for local communities to capture and store rainwater, for example.
A federal program.
A federal program.
Okay.
And there's state money too. So if some of these local communities can take advantage of that sort of offer, start a program of recycling or rainwater capture, storage, groundwater storage, or even desalinization, get a little bit of federal seed money and then use some of the state money and local money, we can make things happen.
But in Sacramento last year, the Democrats and Republicans got together. They had differing views on why we were in drought, but they got together and they pushed for a water bond that passed overwhelmingly, $7.545 billion.
That's right.
In Washington, it seems like the Democrats and Republicans are still pointing at each other as to why the California drought is fish over food and fish over people or whatever it is. How can we get to a place where Washington helps California and not point as to why this is happening?
I think you're right. There's a couple of bills out there that I think are message bills. I don't think they're serious. They would do away with the Endangered Species Act or other very important environmental protections just to ship more water to the south of the Delta. Those aren't going to go anywhere. We need to cooperate. And as I said, there is cooperation here and in the state. I have a water sense bill that'll encourage people to buy more water efficient products. And there's other activities. My colleague Jared Huffman has a bill out there that will address some of the immediate concerns.
You mentioned tunnels, and I want to ask you briefly about tunnels. You're referring to tunnels under the Delta or around the Delta. The governor had what was known as the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, which he has scrapped, I guess, or revised, but part of that revision does not exclude his plan to build tunnels.
Well, the new revision basically splits the old Bay Delta Conservation Plan. The BDCP had a construction part, which put in the massive tunnels, and it had a restoration part, and it was a unified plan. Now, the new proposal sort of splits those. It keeps the massive construction project and reduces the restoration project. So it's not really a win for people in the Delta who are concerned that if you spend $20 to $50 billion putting in massive tunnels, first of all, they won't produce any new water. And they won't be able to ship water for 20 years, so it's not going to help this drought.
Yet the governor, who's on his second tour of duty as governor, this is an issue that he has stuck with for 40 years. I mean, he really wants to see something happen in the Delta. Is there a way for the forces to get together and figure this out?
There is, Brad, but we can't be narrow-minded like that. What I'm envisioning is a situation where all of our urban areas are encouraged to capture and store rainwater and recycle, maybe do some desalinization as appropriate.
That's exciting.
So that there's less demand in the urban areas for water, and then have a groundwater banking system that actually monitors deposits and withdrawals.
We could go on for hours. His name is Jerry McNerney, member of the U.S. Congress. I'm Brad Pomeroy. It's Local Edition.